huge day here on Easter at the Rip Curl Pro Bells Beach. Welcome to the WSL Post Show. What a way to round out the competition. Heat 6 of round 3. We'll be talking about this one for a while. Ronnie Blakey with Ross Williams and Pete Mell. What a great exchange to finish off a big Easter Sunday here at Bells.
That was pretty cool. You know, Mason just came fighting right back, but what an opportunity for that wave to run as long as it did, for him to just keep ticking away at all those moves. That had to sting a little bit for Adriano.
Holy Easter bunnies, Batman. That was cool. That was like entertainment at its fullest. We always expect that from Mason Ho, and we get to see it every time. I don't know how he does it. He entertains every single time.
Every time he hits the lineup. The Pipe Masters,
whether
he got through a lot of heat.
Whether he's doing a kick out or anything, you can't even contain yourself. It's so much fun.
Are you okay?
How much of a workout did the Shaka get on the way up the beach from Mason Ho? He was buzzing. Shaka. And it is a huge result, obviously, in the context of the world title race. You think about Adriano de Souza, finaled in this event last year, knocked out in the third round, and that top 10 picture is starting to look very interesting, with Matt Wilkinson yet to drop a heat in 2016. Huge day of competition.
Really big, a lot of buzzer beaters, and to be honest, Adriano de Souza, I really loved the way he surfed in that heat against Mason. The line he drew on one of his waves was super aggressive. You know, we know that he connects the dots and really plants all his moves, but he was drawing deep cuts on his bottom turns and hitting some sketchy floaters, and you know, that's going to hurt a little bit because he surfed good.
It is going to hurt, but a great performance from last year's world champion. Rosie Hodge has Adriano now.
Yeah, thank you so much for keeping us so entertained in that last heat, Adriano. I mean, Ross was just saying that he loved the lines that you're drawing on these walls, so you must take some confidence out of your performance. Your surfing is definitely on point.
Yeah, it's true. This is one of my favorite waves, and yeah, and then the last exchange, Mason got it, and then yeah, well done. I think he surfed better than me, and yeah, I just want to keep motivation for the next event, and that's the one I won last year, so. For me here, Bell's gone, and yeah, keep fighting, and definitely I want to come back home and realize what I did, and definitely I had some mistake out there, but it's not just something I won't say I lost because I did something wrong out there. No, I just do my best, and maybe I always have some point that we can improve. And that's why I come back home right now and watching, and definitely want to learn from Mason because he won the heat. So yeah, back to the gym, back to do my work, and yeah, see you at the big Margaret's.
And that's something I want to touch on. I mean, it always seems that every single wave, every time you're paddling back out, you're always giving 100%. So how important is it to you to surf to your full potential and go home knowing that you did your best?
Yeah, it's one of the things, like before the heat started, you wanted to do your best, and all the preparation before, that's what I want to do, you know, out there, do my best, and I think I did, and but it was not enough. Yeah, just congratulations Mason, he surfed amazing. He took out Jeremy, he was the top 10 guy, and now he took the number 1.
Well, Adriano, thank you so much for your time, boys.
And Adriano de Souza, the 2015 world champ. He deserves a lot of credit for the way he handles losses and how gracious he is in defeat, always giving a lot of respect and a lot of kudos to his opposition.
I mean, it's something to learn from. I think everybody who is aspiring to be a competitive surfer, I would take a lot from how Adriano, and even Felipe too, another one who really is gracious in his losses and looks at it as a learning experience.
Yeah, it allows him to improve. And, you know, he's such a student. Whenever I watch his post-heat interviews, I feel like I'm watching someone who just lost a jiu-jitsu match or something. You know, he's very honest with just how he lost, and he gives credit to the winner. And so I think that allows him to just keep notching up.
We talked about the top 10 picture, and there has been some of the top seeds coming into this contest tumbling out of the draw early on. Let's bring up the Jeep leaderboard. And it's looking pretty interesting. Matt Wilkinson, I mentioned him, hasn't dropped a heat yet this year, and he has the opportunity now to really push further ahead of the field with 4 surfers just behind him on the ratings out of the mix.
It's good stuff, you know, and it's, I think there's a healthy mix of new blood coming into that swing. It tightens everything up. I mean, Wilco obviously in a really strong position, being at the top of the leaderboard and still in the event.
And I would say, Ronnie, that, you know, Joel Parkinson and John, they're going to be, you know, sparked, because I think, you know, especially for someone like John, who's stated, hey, I want to win a world title, I'm going to be serious. this is an opportunity, because some of the usual suspects are out of the way.
Exactly, but it's going to be an interesting event to watch unfold. Adriano made mention of Mason's earlier damage that he did in the draw, taking out Jeremy Flores, who last year was a top 10 surfer. Let's reflect back on that second heat of the day, because Mason, he stole the show. It was a grindy heat, though. Conditions were tough early on, Pete.
I mean, and a whole entire day was a grindy day. I mean, we had onshore breeze really, really early. It never really ever cleaned up. There was a moment there where a few heats where it kind of felt like it glassed off, but then sure enough, the wind came back that southerly direction, and it was a challenging day. It was big, it was wild, it was cold. So you had to grind your heats, you had to make choices, you had to take waves that sometimes you didn't think were going to be very good, and then ended up having to surf your best. You couldn't make any mistakes. It was fatiguing, all of these things.
Ross Jeremy's been doing such a good job at keeping a lid on his temper in recent times, but the frustration of an early round loss here to a wild card, it drove him mad.
Yeah, I think it did. He definitely showed some frustration. I think he took it out a little bit on his equipment, which to be honest, I kind of liked it. It just showed that he's still fired up. It's cool. You got to release that energy somehow. Just like, the tour is so strong right now. It seems like there's hardly any losses where people are just getting smacked to the side. Everyone's putting up a really good fight.
Jeremy surfing with a lot of form in 2015, bringing that same flow to the new season, but just getting upset in tricky conditions by Mason Ho in that clash. The next heat we're going to focus on after we see this ride from Mason is heat number 5.
Gotta give a lot of credit to Mason, though. I mean, this kid, as much fun as he's having, he really wants to win, and he's a really wily competitor. Think of the lineage he's coming from. You've got a world champion in Derek Ho, his uncle, Michael Ho, and all the wins that he's had. Coco, been on the top of the women's championship tour for a long time, so you have to give a lot of credit to that Ho family, and especially to Mason for putting together. I mean, every time he surfs in a CT, he does damage.
Thank them for the DNA. With natural competitors, for sure.
So pretty close heat score totals there, and it was a grindy second round win for Mason Ho, but he started to set things up in round 3. As I mentioned, heat 5, Jordy Smith, Adam Melling, bit of a replay from that J-Bay final back in 2010, and Jordy Smith recovering after a pretty sad first round effort.
Yeah, what's so cool is I feel like this wave right here, 9.2 from Jordy Smith. It was the first wave of the morning where we finally saw someone kind of rip the lid off. Big old Marmaduke. We always plant him as the guy and tell everyone how he's supposed to surf good out here. It's nice to see, Pete, that he showed up and delivered.
Oh, for sure, and he did it with such ease. I mean, it wasn't like he was trying too hard. He knew how to match pace for pace here, and he did that, and he did it with power and grace. It was something that he knew he had to do, but it's always, or putting that into the drawing board and putting it into action is always a bit difficult, but he did it all to a T here, and the big floats, and he did the layback snaps, those things that even his coach Chris Gallagher is saying, hey, simplify for him, and do those moves that you're strong at, and you'll succeed, you'll get scores.
Must have been a bit of a nerve-wracking draw for him, though. The injury replacements have been on a tear in the first couple of events so far, and Adam Melling, even though he's not going to be campaigning full-time on the CT this year, I think we'll see him get a few opportunities. I think he's surfing better than ever before.
I would agree. It wasn't like he laid down in this one. He didn't get smacked to the side, as you say.
Right.
I mean, Adam was right in this one, especially when that 817 kind of in the middle of the heat.
He had the advantage of being quicker. That was clear right there. You see those waves back to back. He's much faster than Jordy, but power was on display today.
A really tight heat on paper, but also once the hooter sounded, it was a good battle between Callahan, Dino and Sebastian Zietz, heat number 7, and it ended up being a bit of a buzzer beater moment for Sebastian Zietz in the final stages. He must have picked off his last ride with only a second as a spare.
Literally, when you talk about hands leaving the rails, it was literally hands leaving the rails, and he popped to his feet. And to be able to surf to potential at that point, when everything's on the line, all the focus is on you, you need a score. I mean, he assumed he probably needed a score, being that Callahan was right there. Didn't know what he was going to need, but that's almost probably easier, I guess, not knowing what you need. You just got to unleash.
Well, what was so impressive is what he did actually before the wave. Remember, he just caught a wave, and he chose to just stay on the rescue sled behind his ski. He said, no, get me out there, and literally those precious couple of seconds made the difference. Maybe in the past, Seabass would have been a little more cruisy, just kind of like, whatever, it's, just leave it out there. But, that's kind of the vibe I think that was taught last year about Adriano de Souza winning the world title. Be serious, and it translates to win.
Interesting note in this in this heat too. Right before he paddled out, he'd been riding the 6'4", bigger board. This is Sebastian. And he was talking about it with Tom Whitaker, who's been helping him out in his corner. He literally snuck a 6'1" out the gates and ran out to sneak the board out because he knew that Tom would probably try and talk him into the bigger board. But ultimately, they kind of, he got words into him. He said, well, if you're going to ride that board, you better lay into those smoother, cleaner faces, and it worked out for him.
Well, you saw the vision. Callahan Dino, he was claiming that he had the win when he got to the beach. Sebastian Zietz took off. Last-ditch effort. Have a look at how close those heat score totals are. Nothing separating those two competitors, and really a heartbreaking result for Callahan after a second-place finish on the Gold Coast. Moving right along, Kyle Belly was up against the wall. Ryan Callahan got off to a great start in his round 2 heat, but Kaya just showed great composure. We know he's one of the more experienced rookies this year, and he brought all that experience to the fore in this heat.
Yeah, I like the leverage he has out there. He's got one of the widest stance on tour, but out here at Bells, it does you favors. It just enables you to draw those really long bottom turns. You're right. Ryan Callahan, that was the first wave I saw in 2016 where I was like, wow, this kid actually really rips. He's had a lot of tentative efforts so far, but this wave right here was impressive, Pete.
Ton of maturity from Kyle to not get frazzled by getting way behind right early in the heat. I mean, he's been surfing amazing. He's been out here every night doing his free surfs. He's been looking good. He knows how to surf the wave. And just to be able to hold it together and then put it the heat in those last back third of the heat to take the lead. I mean, that goes to show, it's going to give him a huge amount of confidence going forward in this event.
Well, he does have a beard now, so he's a lot wiser than what he used to be.
That's it.
He is powering on through to the later rounds. With positive signs for Ryan Callahan, I feel like he's a bit of a Ricardo Christie at this stage of the game, really impressing everyone with his performances. He's just got to keep at it, stay on point. He's going to get a result somewhere along the lines. But Kaio is moving on through, and it sets up a great heat with him and John Florence in round 3. Let's talk about what unfolded in those first 3 heats of that third round. Not too many upsets until we got to the last heat of the day. The top seeds were really stepping things up in this event.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of my favorite heats I saw all day was Italo up against Sebastian Zietz. He's just so much fun to watch. You can't help but to root for him. First of all, he's just a little tank. You see him going down the line, you just know he's not going to fall. But I love how he has such a knack for being clutch. He just never falls. He always shows up, and he loves being critical.
It's like a beer fridge. Just always delivers
honestly,
the goods.
doesn't he have that nickname in Brazil? He has some...
The fridge.
The fridge,
that's
right?
what they call him, yeah.
The fridge with what, cat-like reflexes?
I swear
Exactly.
I saw his dad walk by in Rio, and I was like, there's his dad. I've never met him, but that is his dad. And he's built just like him. But I love that guy. He's such a
One
nugget.
of the things that I think that makes them special, and Gabriel Medina has the same thing, is that they're really balanced foot to foot. Right, it almost looks like they're surfing switch foot, and I think that helps them when they're doing all those air moves and stuff like that. But it also helps them to be able to stay balanced when they're hitting the lip and being able to land. Everything's balanced when they land. They're never landing about 1 foot or 1 foot the other. It's always just right there, like almost a snowboard style.
I don't think anyone dealt with those tricky floater maneuvers on the inside like Italo did on that clutch last ride. Sebastian Zietz, he had the highest scoring wave of the heat of 9.5, but this is in the dying stages. Italo tracked down a 9.33, and it was the end section turn which really blew us away.
Again, he has such a knack for those critical sections. It's like they're just there's this magnetism that comes right towards Italo, and he always shows up and delivers.
Look at the tank. Good
It's like
stuff.
a movie star at the moment too. Italo Ferreira, have a look at that mugshot. Very impressive. Heat score total 17, 9.33 in the dying stages.
Nacho Libre.
And you know what? Kudos to Sebastian Zietz. Had a 9.5, and he took that early lead. It was almost like he was going to cruise into another round.
Matt Wilkinson, looking dashing in yellow and just loving the opportunity to carry the form that he showed us on the Gold Coast into the bigger lineup here at Bells Beach. Really comfortable on the open face, and I think it was a pretty comfortable draw too for Wilco. He's surfing with a lot of power at the moment up against the youngest surfer on tour, and really one of the greyhounds in the mix, Kanoa Igarashi.
Yeah, it's a good call. But that right there was a tutorial on how to hit the lip square. I could watch that maneuver over and over. That was one of the best backhand snaps we saw all event. So performance aside, very impressive. I know he's got the lead. You know, he's serious. His act is, you know, attack sharp. But I just love that one snap.
I think one thing that you can take note here too is that he's not on that magic surfboard, so it doesn't mean that he has to surf that board for the rest of the season. I think it's it's something he can take and go, okay, it's all about my ability, it's about my confidence, about all these other things than just this magic surfboard, because I know you can get attached to that. At least I used to.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up, because Felipe last year, he needed that magic board to get his event wins, and Matt Wilkinson showing that he can chase down a couple of really solid scores on a step-up piece of equipment. So looking really good. We're going to have another look at it. The last heat of the day, Adriano de Souza, last year's world champion, up against Mason Ho, and Mason getting the job done on the final exchange. And it's just such a good matchup to look at on paper, because these guys are just so different, Pete.
Well, you look at Mason Ho just before his demeanor carrying himself in the beginning of the heat too. As his paddle outs, he's just smiles. He is enjoying every second. And even though he's trying to be a bit serious, you know what? He's out there smiling. He's giving kisses. He's giving hugs. He gives everybody attention. He gives everybody eye contact. It is so engaged. It's awesome.
Yeah, he's got a good balance, doesn't he? Much like what Seabass has kind of found, and Wilco. Have fun. You know, you don't have to be a weird robot, you know, to compete on tour and win. Have fun on the side, but when you put the jersey on and you hop in the water, then it's game time, and you put in 100% effort, and you could see that from, Mason. He has that magic.
Again, I just love watching these two battle it out. They're similar in stature. They're both little hairy guys, and they've got a really different approach.
Did you just say they're both little hairy guys?
Well, they are.
They are.
God bless
They're
you.
short little hairy guys.
But Mason, he always has that real attention to detail and style. Adriano smoothed out his lines over the years. He's become one of the favourites in this event each season, but he couldn't overcome the young wildcard. And I just think it's Mason's ability to just keep cool-headed in these big CT moments. Anyone else would crumble under the pressure, but he just continues to get the heat wins in these big moments and take down some of the biggest names in surfing.
It's a lot like Hawaii, too, out here. And on a day like today, Mason was for sure energized. He was psyched. That reminded me a lot of Sunset Beach, and I think that kind of helped him get the mojo out there.
No, for sure. And I think there's a comfort that he's now come down here. It's his sponsors. They're taking care of him. The sponsors event, he's taking care of him. He brought on right before the event last year, got a wild card, and then he performed there. He's performed again. I expect him to perform tomorrow.
We've set up some good heats in the fourth round. We've still got some big matchups to come in the remaining heats of round 3, kicking off with Mick Fanning and Dusty Payne. That could be going off as early as 8:05 tomorrow morning. That's when we'll be kicking off Dawn Patrol, 8 a.m, and we'll be looking to make a call on whether we send the women out there to find our remaining quarterfinalists for the Rip Curl Pro for the ladies, or we'll see the men back out there. Again, we want to say a big Happy Easter to everyone. We hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to leave you with some highlights, and we'll see you at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.
This copyrighted event broadcast is produced by the World Surf League for broadcast around the world and may not be retransmitted, reproduced, rebroadcast, or otherwise distributed or used in any form without the written consent of the World Surf League.
The swell's come up huge overnight. It's really bombing out there in the sort of solid 8-foot range on the sets. We're going to start at 8:05.
First couple heats look solid. You can see Italo Ferrer and Tim Stevenson ready to kick things off here on Easter Sunday.
There's so many implications that could go down here in round 2.
And Stevenson lays into a highline carve.
Kelly Slater's got an interesting draw there up against the purple-headed warrior. Kelly still chasing that elusive 55th Championship Tour victory with a couple of sixes. Does enough to get the jump on the 19-year-old wildcard.
Now Jordy's up, holds that rail off the top.
I'll tell you what, that was a big mistake there from Adam Melling.
We're now going to see one of the most exciting heats of the second round as Andino uses priority out the back. Huge floater. Sebastian Zietz, he's banking on that last ride. Another injury replacement surfer making the jump into the third round.
Italo Ferrer now, a lofty backhand float, lands it perfectly. A big end section hack.
How many times have we seen him do that, Joe? He's just so solid on his feet.
Well, this is the Jeep ratings leader, Matt Wilkinson, driving up into the lift and bashing
looking really comfortable in the Jeep yellow jersey on top of the Jeep leaderboard.